Well, begrudgingly, I will be lazily recording portions of this swap, but the M52 that used to be in my E30 M3, that was in my friend John's daily driver for, God, what, 8 years? 7, 8 years? Now going to go into his convertible. So right now the M20B25 is being drained of its vital fluids one by one, starting with coolant and the block drain. We'll move on to the radiator, then engine oil, then power steering. And I'm still on the fence, but I believe we will be dropping this out the bottom like we did with Jacques, the 325 IS that this came out of. Aaron, it was just an I, right? It wasn't an IS? Just an I. But block drain is dribbling. We have the luxury of time because we have beer. And then, yeah, it's down here. The weather is finally not shit. It's, what do we got? 75 degrees instead of 100, which is excellent. But yeah, fluids first. So yeah, we've done no work on this at all, actually. It's completely stock. AFM out, shroud out, fan clutch out. Radiator has been sufficiently loosenated. Throttle cable removed. Heater hoses gone. Ground strap, which is apparently on the left side on early models, which I forgot. Engine harness has been split from the chassis harness, which is good. Coolant thing, definitely that's where it sits normally. John still has one more 8mm to loosen on that, their ignition coil. Then we have to pull the ECU out of the dash area. After that, I'll pop the radiator out entirely. And see what else is left top side. Radiator hoses are done. We do have to loosen the fuel lines. I'm not sure. Let's look at the M52 and see how I did that. Those were loosened, at the rail. So yeah, we do have to loosen those both on the top side and pull them off here. I will mark the return and the feed before we pull that off because that's obviously pretty critical. I've looked like an idiot more than once swapping those out when getting the new engine in, so I'll mark this one. Regulator I think is return, so I'll mark that. The feed should be right underneath here, but unfortunately, annoyingly on 87s only, they put the feed line under the middle of the intake manifold right there, so A+. Thank you, BMW. Appreciate that. At least the belt is nice and fresh. It still works, doesn't it? Anyway, AC lines, boy, let me tell you, really love the 80s BMW engineers. Boy, they had your best interest in mind. Just, let's put a 31 mil on there. 32 in the fan right there, you gotta take, nope, 31. Anyway, AC's undone. I'm not bitter. That's fine, everything's fine. Everything's fine. AC lines are off. O2 disconnected. 10 mil split. Main positive. Chassis harness. 10 mil removed. Ground side. Engine harness out of the grommet. Laying on top of the engine. Heater hoses removed. Fuel lines labeled and removed. Luckily, somebody had already been in here and split the feed side, so we're good there. Next two things. We lift up the car, we remove the power steering hoses, drain all that. And after that, what's the next thing? I forgot. There's one more thing. Exhaust. Exhaust is next. Then beer. Then we grill. And then this waits for another day to drop the engine out because the cart is at the other garage and I'm lazy and trailer's full of a lily pad and a tube, and I wish YouTube would let me have music on in the background while I video. Nice. I give that like a 3 out of 10 though. You got to get a little more follow through. Those are 24s. Forgot about the oil cooler, and I didn't want to lie to you guys. So there were 3 things. Power steering is draining, and it definitely has mineral oil in it, which is problem. The exhaust is off though. That's down there, and the asbestos is down there, so it's not a problem. But let me see if I got a 24mm wrench. Let's get those off. Get the proper 10 mil out here, and then whatever sort of inbred room temperature IQ or put a Torx in there, we'll get that out too. As you can see, the oil cooler is out. We made a huge mess. As is customary with that M52 though, every time it changes cars, we have Ritz bits and Blue Moon. If you go way back on the channel, I think to 2015, you'll find my E30 M3 right after I bought it. We pulled the engine out, which is that engine, and it went into that 325i. And the first start video, a Blue Moon unfortunately died for the cause, but we were eating Ritz bits at an aggressive rate the entire time. So that's what this is. Well, I got the cart underneath. Ignore Tom and his Porsche next door. I do still have to pull the steering shaft. After that, though, I think we're ready to drop. All right. Uh-oh. He's catching us up on something. Gotta take a closer look here. All right. Everything's looking pretty good. I do kind of want to shift it over to the passenger side here because we got those vacuum fittings over there, but everything else looks free. C101, we'll have to redirect to make sure that doesn't get hung up on anything. Ideally, we'd probably take the throttle body off, but oh, I haven't taken the power steering lines all the way off the rack, even though they're loose and draining. Got to do that real quick. All right, yeah, we're looking good. I forgot, since I took this whole thing out together, I could have left the rack lines on, but we'll need to take them off anyway for the other power steering pump. The brake fluid is going to continue to drain out of the system. We need to do that anyway because the IX booster and master cylinder need to end up there. But yeah, here's our M20B25, 87 only, for the harness and intake configuration and everything. And then our shot to bit Getrag 260-5. All that stayed in really nice. So, yeah, buddy. Not too bad. That'll probably be where I leave it for today, but when I get John back down here on Thursday, we'll get that entire dropout over there onto this subframe, get it all back into the car. Obviously, I got to do the IX booster. But really, yeah, we're making progress. All right. Little did you know, you were going to get a little bit of mukbang in the middle of this bad boy. There's the B25 with the grenaded 260-5. And there's the M52 B28 with the better trans on it. I was reminded, and we'll have to take a look at it once this is all actually bolted in place, but I think we may have to do a rear main seal on this thing. And of course I didn't bring one with me, which is really extra fun. So we have two options there. One is pull the trans off, put the entire thing into the car without the trans, and then do the rear main and trans another day, which sucks, but it's not the end of the world. Or hopefully it's not the rear main. But like I said, we have to put the engine mount bolts in first, then we can get a better look at it on the lift cart. But yeah, it looks like it's actually fitting pretty well. Now we have a superfluous ground strap on this side too, which is great for that double ground action. But so far, really haven't hit too much for snags in the car itself. I degreased, can you tell? Calipers back in. The rebuilt brake booster is in there. Reservoir's in. Master cylinder's in. I cut off the old fuel hoses and the charcoal tank hose. And I made a note to myself that the top line is the regulator. The bottom is not. Anyway, other than that, pretty much exactly as we left it. All right, just for documentation purposes, since we're gonna forget what belt's on the thing. All right, that's stock. John actually just ran the VIN on this, and it's from a 96 328i, and it was in a 97 528i before it went into my E30 M3, before it went into his old 325S, before it's going in this. So M52 B28s, man, these things are tough as nails. Anyway, I do have the power steering lines back in. Those are all tightened down. Fuel lines, man, we'll have to do when it's in the car. Luckily, they're relatively easy to get to down here. Shouldn't be too bad. Starter is fine. Everything actually still looks okay. Oh, we're actually missing an M7 nut on the back of the intake. That's probably just left off from servicing. I'll put one of those on before we dump it in the car, but yeah, I think we're pretty much ready to hoist it into that hole over there. Well, with the assistance of a bottle cap, an engine load bar, a hydraulic cart, ratchet straps, and a floor jack, it's in. Got everything bolted up. I do still have to hook up the steering. That is not connected. Really, really hard to align at the time, so I'm electing to loosen the rack bolts and work with it that way. It's gonna suck either way, but yeah, that's 24 valves. Still have to get the top mount in on this side. We have one of the studs in on that side. Jury's out, but I think I prefer the top in method still. Aligning this was tricky just because the engine likes to lean back a little bit. But really, all things considered, that only maybe took us an hour, so wasn't that bad. Oh God. Let's see what it looks like on the bottom. All right, so we still have to hook up the F-cabs. That should be real easy. Trans stuff's all the same, Getrag 260-5. Exhaust even, it's like it was always here, like it was meant to be. But yeah, the steering, as you can see up here, I did put a paint witness mark on it. But as long as we can center the rack and the steering at the same time, there's actually a little plastic mark on the rack, which we can't see right here. And, oh, I can rotate it for you. You can see the gold mark right there on the plastic. So that's essentially where we have to line everything up, but the rack has to get loosened. So not too hard to push that forward. Let's put the calipers back on, reconnect ABS sensors, reconnect the wear sensor on this side, and then fuel lines. Got the two hard lines right there, and then we have the two hard lines on the intake manifold right there. Shouldn't be too bad. Drive shaft is the same, that'll be staying, but I do have to pull it out because we are going to be swapping in that rebuilt S3.73, because why not? Yeah, lots more steps to go, but really nothing as hard as what we've done, so woohoo. As is customary with this particular BMW M52 B28, we have switched over to Blue Moon post-grill shenanigans. Nothing has happened to the car since my last video clip, but we're going to be taking out the steering rack bolts, getting the rack and the actual steering shaft put back together. Going to get fuel lines done. We'll probably start on the cooling system. We'll put the brake calipers back on. We'll bleed that out. We'll definitely have some Ritz bits. TBD on the drive shaft, whether we do that tonight. We did save the drive shaft. That was a terrible noise from the donor car. It is a reman, but the vert only has like 100 and, I don't know, low 100s on it. We do have to put the reverse light switch from the other trans onto this because this one's broken. But really, the biggest and first thing is going to be the steering shaft. I cannot convey just how much these suck to deal with, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I don't know how you roast a clutch in 110,000 miles, but somebody did. Anyway, the M20 has been separated from the garbage transmission and the very nice single mass flywheel. The brake calipers are back on. Front control arm bushings are on and in. We did locate the actual bolts for, actually they're screws technically because they go into a fixed orifice, for the throttle body into the intake manifold. This thing's sitting on engine mounts. I do still have to put on, oh no, I have to put on the heater hoses. Oh, that job sucks. Forgot about that. Okay, anyway, heater hoses, fuel lines. The ECU thingy mabob is fed into the glove box, but nothing else. The top mounts are in, but not torqued. Power steering reservoirs up here has not yet been replaced, which, boy, that should happen. Because there's a filter in there, and it had mineral oil in it in the old rack. Owner taking things very seriously. Belt is still kind of cracked. But no, I think one more really good solid evening crank, and this thing will be completely done. The C101 is a little bit different on the 87, and this was originally in a 91 and then an 89. So it is worth looking into for us, because I have had instances in the past where these C101s are mismatched to the point where one of the wires has a ground signal it's expecting, and it gets positive and ends up being particularly damaging to the chassis harness. So we definitely want to look into that before we actually put a battery in it. But yeah, the M52 is looking pretty good in here. It's been a long time since I've done an E30 24 valve swap. Still very much old hat. We were not working particularly hard at this tonight, and by far the hardest part was just putting in 4 bolts in the subframe. So we'll get her chooching. This thing should be a very, very fun car, but that is all for day 2. I'm going to call this day 2, even though I think it's actually day 4. Day 2. Train! Alright, so the rebuilt 373 clutch is in there. You can tell it's a clutch diff because it has the big gold S on it from the factory. And when I spin one, both chooch. When we popped it in here, there was so much POR 15 on the front of this that it actually seized it, but got everything back together, got the CSB preloaded and installed. Got the bitch clip, which, boy, does that live up to its name when you buy shitty Delrin bushings. I got the 24 valve swap K-member back in. Now it's just heat shield time. And then largely it's just zip tying that. This car is gonna run like complete piss with an O2 and open air. But we gotta zip tie that up somewhere down here for the exhaust shop. And then I think the rest of it largely is topside. So anyway, woo, woo, woo! Oh, it has been not a lot of progress, but a lot of time since the last clip. The booster needed to be upside down. It's not even close to fitting with the throttle position sensor. Oh God, and the throttle body without it flipped. So I ended up having to get the load bar on the engine, pulling the upper nut off this mount almost all the way. And then I was able to remove the booster enough just to flip it and push it back in. So the Girling sticker faces down. Now, I got the fuel lines in. I'm not sure if I showed you that or not. The heater hoses are both in. That sucked so much ass. New fuel filters in. I do need to check and see if it's got oil in it. That, I'll check after I'm done filming, I guess. And then it's basically just cooling system after that. So, well, obviously grounding things over there, plugging in the power where it needs juice. But we're getting pretty close. We could probably fire it up in like 5 minutes if we really wanted to, but may as well continue methodically. We do also have to check, this is an 87, so there's a 1 year only C101 difference where there's a ground wire that would normally have power. So I'm not entirely sure. This is from my M3, and that's basically an early model, so I'm guessing that's already been cut out. It spent the last 8 years in 89, so it's probably okay. But yeah, still worth checking for sure. So we don't want to light this thing on fire, ideally. All right, got everything pretty much buttoned up. We had a loose clamp up here, but that's all sorted. No fire, no smoke. Pin 20 has already been clipped out of there, so we should be good. It's got oil, it's got power steering fluid, it's got coolant. The brakes are bled. Yeah, I think basically just gonna give it a go now. We have the customary Blue Moon and the customary Ritz bits. Engine swap fuel. So let's see. As is customary. It's too goddamn easy.
Right, so small too.
Oh, the tack doesn't work though. Nice. Oh, all right. C101, very thin black wire up here, has been very carefully routed using an indistinguishable aftermarket wire into the glove box area to the white 3-pin connector, the black wire. Everything seems Gucci. So, now we see if John dies when he tries to drive it. Uh-oh. What did I leave? Oh yeah, a finger from the glove. How will I sleep at night without that? Oh, don't leave us all in suspense.
Why don't you take the clutch stuff out of here?
Well, just don't hit Brexit, or I guess do if you want to buy me a new Brexit.
Well, I'm going in reverse first.
Okay. I'm zoomed in on the tachometer. I want to see this bad boy. Check engine lights on. Oh, man. What? Stinky. Yes, the brakes work, I get it. Don't worry about that. Oh, no chin spoiler. Wow. What a scrub. Oh yeah, we hood rich now. Nobody needs a stinking muffler or Cadillac converter. 2, 3.
I think the top has a little bit more of a dent than it did before.
But oh no, the doors came off. And the chair barely did anything.
There we go.
Now it's perfect. Now it's perfect. That was structurally integral beforehand.